share the Chiefs' faith in this trio of wide receivers.
We could have included, there was other important notes in that article that we could have included as well.
Like what?
Andy Reid being thrilled that Jackson County Detention Center let Rashee Rice leave a couple times to go get his knee checked out. That was important. It was nice of them. He said it was nice.
I just don't know if that's an update you want to hear.
Well, it's better than the alternative.
It's better than the alternative.
So listen, here's it on the Chiefs wide receivers.
Okay.
It's twofold. One is they believe internally that last year's lack of production was a combination of injuries and being unavailable, the suspension plus Xavier Worthy getting hurt immediately and not being 100%. Coaching, which is they replaced wide receiver coach and offensive coordinator, and a total lack of any running game threat that allowed teams to only play the pass. That is one bucket of this. They think all of those things, you hope the injuries are not as bad this year, you change coaches, and you spent money on the running back. That's one piece. The other piece of it is the Chiefs' philosophy, and I agree with this, is the only way to continue to try to keep a 5, 10, 15-year run with a quarterback that's going to be making Mahomes money the whole way is to give your top draft picks every single chance to succeed before you abandon the plan. Rashee was a second-round pick. Xavier Worthy was a first-round pick. A couple years ago, they drafted Kingsley Suamataia as a second-round pick to play tackle. He could not play tackle at all. They kept giving him chances. Now he's a really quality left guard and like part of their, I think one of their strengths on the offensive line. They were never going to, in my opinion, overspend at wide receiver because they feel like they have spent at wide receiver and they have to have those guys pan out. And so it is a lot of ifs they are relying on, but that is the philosophy, and that is why I think they don't make what I consider some of the panic moves some of the other AFC contenders I've seen them make.
Yeah, to Nick's point, they had to look at this holistically, and they had to address the secondary, huge holes in the secondary, so they did that. They had to address the pass rushers, so they did that. So both through free agency and the draft, they had to address the running game. They were 25th last year in terms of rushing attack, so they do that with Kenneth Walker. So they address their three biggest needs. They have the least amount of salary cap of anybody in the NFL, so it's not like there's unlimited money. And then when you look at it in terms of what they expect from their players, the quarterback's got to produce at a much higher level. So he was sacked at the highest rate he's been sacked at in his career, 6.83%, coming off the highest year he had been sacked the year before. I think it was like 5.8, so that went up a percentage. His lowest completion percentage, his lowest quarterback rating, so he needs to play better, and I think them running the ball will help them play better. To Nick's point about the group in general, Rashee Rice had 54 receptions in, 8 games?
Right.
I mean, he was on pace for a mega year, and things happen. Worthy has the potential to be that big play receiver if he can play consistently. And then with Thornton, for a guy, he had the highest per catch number of any receiver with over 7 receptions last year. So he's got the potential to be a big play player if he can play more consistently, and you hope the addition of Eric Bieniemy is going to do that. But the starting point is Patrick Mahomes needs to play like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. All those needs were more pressing than receiver. Now, if you could have made it work financially and got an A.J. Brown or something like that, that would have been great. But the 3 receivers we're talking about, I do like. Rashee is clearly, I think, a number 1 if he's available. Like, my only issue with him is, will he be available? And if he is, he's great underneath. He's great yards after catch. And then Worthy and Thornton are great deep ball threats. So you have that combination. With Walker, your running game should open things up. Kelsey's still there. He'll be productive. We don't expect prime Kelsey, but he'll be productive. So, look, What I might think about, I certainly have internal conversations about, do we want to go after Stephon Diggs? You know, he's been a good soldier in the locker room, at least where he's been. I talk about it.
I have discussed this topic ad nauseum, and my position remains unchanged. I consistently emphasize that every franchise should be aggressively pursuing acquisitions to bolster their rosters. However, I recognize that the Kansas City Chiefs face a unique set of challenges in this regard. From a purely public relations standpoint, given the myriad controversies and narratives they have already navigated in recent years, the prospect of making a high-profile addition could introduce a level of complexity and scrutiny that the organization might prefer to avoid. The potential for a messy media cycle or unexpected backlash is likely a significant deterrent, and it is understandable why the front office would be hesitant to invite such complications. Nevertheless, I firmly believe that the Chiefs' performance last season was a significant underrepresentation of their true capabilities. The on-field product was marred by a confluence of unfortunate circumstances that painted an unfairly bleak picture. When you factor in a brutal string of injuries, several uncharacteristically poor individual performances in critical games, and the direct impact of Patrick Mahomes' own physical limitations, the overall perception of the team became severely distorted. These issues, combined with suspensions and other disruptions, created a magnifying effect that obscured the team's fundamental strengths. The resulting narrative was not an accurate reflection of who the Kansas City Chiefs genuinely were as a cohesive unit. Now, even in their peak moments last year, did they resemble the terrifying juggernaut we have become accustomed to? The answer is a definitive no. However, the question of whether they remained a competitive force and a difficult opponent to overcome is equally clear. Without a doubt, they were. The core elements of their identity, resilience, strategic execution, and championship pedigree, were still present, even if somewhat obscured by the surrounding chaos. This is the crucial foundation upon which we must build our expectations for the coming season. Therefore, when you project forward and add a player of Kenneth Walker's caliber to the mix, the outlook becomes significantly more promising. I anticipate a marked improvement from him as well, as he settles into the system. Furthermore, having the receiving duo of Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy healthy and available for a full campaign represents a monumental upgrade. These are not minor adjustments, they are substantial additions that address the very weaknesses that plagued the team last year. It is logical to assume that these critical issues will be largely resolved. Does this automatically anoint them as the undisputed, bona fide #1 team in the National Football League? Not necessarily, as other contenders have also improved and the competition is fierce. However, it unquestionably elevates them to a significantly higher echelon of competitiveness. They will be a team that no opponent will relish facing, and their potential to make a deep playoff run is restored. Now, addressing a specific piece of discourse that I find particularly grating, the notion that trading for a star wide receiver like a Jalen Waddle or a DJ Moore is an act of desperation. This is an egregiously obnoxious assertion, and there is simply no alternative way to interpret it. The logic is fundamentally flawed and reeks of a double standard that is applied only to certain teams. It is absurd to suggest that a franchise is prohibited from making proactive moves to improve its roster without being labeled as desperate. The criticism is relentless and baseless. Can you imagine the uproar if any other team made a splashy move to acquire a premier talent? The narrative would be framed as bold, aggressive, or visionary. But for the Chiefs, it is invariably dismissed as a frantic, last-ditch effort. The hypocrisy is staggering. For instance, the common refrain that you can find a running back in the third round of the draft is used to justify not spending money on the position, yet when a team does invest, they are ridiculed. It is a nonsensical and tiresome cycle of criticism. The entire discourse is simply absurd. To further illustrate my point about the existing roster's potential, I engaged in a detailed statistical debate recently in a comment section. I was contending with a typical Mahomes superfan who was attempting to diminish Andy Reid's coaching genius, the usual tired narrative. I meticulously broke down the numbers to demonstrate that Rashee Rice was, in fact, on an exceptional trajectory before his injury. If you extrapolated his production over a 17-game season, his statistics in yards after catch, receptions, and overall efficiency were remarkable. More importantly, he was achieving this elite production through some of the easiest and most simplified throws in the entire league. The synergy between Mahomes, Rice, and Reid's play calling was extraordinarily consistent. The offense was designed to get him the ball in space, through shorter, high-percentage passes, yet he was still generating maximal output. He was on pace to rival or surpass receivers who played the full 16 or 17 games, but he was accomplishing it with significantly less difficulty. This demonstrates a clear, replicable formula for success that the offense can lean on heavily. I see no reason why this dynamic cannot be re-established and serve as a cornerstone of the offense. Regarding Xavier Worthy, I recently had a conversation with a die-hard Chiefs fan who was already ready to label him a bust. I find this assessment to be drastically premature. The issue, I believe, stems from external hype. Many fans, perhaps influenced by figures like Nick Wright, who dramatically portrayed Worthy as the greatest player ever and the steal of the century, allowed their expectations to become wildly inflated. The rhetoric was that he would immediately take over games and be a franchise-altering force. This is an unrealistic burden to place on any rookie. I believe Worthy will develop into a quality receiver. As a society, we are far too fixated on draft capital. We obsess over first, second, and third-round selections. There is a pervasive expectation that any first-round pick must be a transformative, generational talent. This is a fallacy. Unless you are selecting in the top 5 or top 3, the realistic hope is simply that you find a reliable starter. That is the threshold for success. If a first-round pick becomes a consistent contributor, you are in business. That is the extent of what you should reasonably expect. I have full confidence that Xavier Worthy will continue to refine his game and improve. The common belief that receivers must explode in their first or second year is not always accurate. In many cases, it is the third or fourth year where they truly establish themselves. His rookie season was chaotic, he dealt with injuries and the team was in flux. It was not a fair representation of his potential. Ultimately, I trust the Chiefs' internal evaluation process far more than the external noise. Their track record suggests they know what they are doing. Having said that, I have also advocated for adding another significant offensive piece. I believe this is what the Chiefs, and more specifically Patrick Mahomes, would desire. I agree that Mahomes must play better. I will not use completion percentage or other conventional metrics as the sole barometer of his performance, as some are prone to do. However, his accuracy and decision-making must improve. Last year, he took some inexplicable chances and was particularly erratic on deep throws. This is a separate issue from the quality of his receivers. His deep ball was simply inaccurate. I am keen to see how this area evolves. I am also curious about his style of play. Is he going to change his approach, perhaps influenced by his knee injury and the physical toll of his career? He is getting older and is coming off a significant injury. The internal conversation between Andy Reid and Mahomes regarding this evolution is fascinating to me. Is the coaching staff telling him to remain true to his aggressive instincts, or are they advising him to begin a strategic transition to a more calculated style of play? I could see arguments for both approaches, and I would love to know what is being discussed. Ultimately, however, I believe the fundamental truth remains that as long as Mahomes and Andy Reid are leading the offense, they will make it work with whatever personnel they have. Competency at the skill positions is the only prerequisite. They are too brilliant and too synergistic to fail. Therefore, my concerns are not about whether they will be competitive. I expect that as a baseline. My curiosity lies in how exceptional they can be. In a division that is improving and a conference that is stacked with talent, being merely competitive might not be sufficient. When you look at other potential Super Bowl contenders, the question shifts to whether the Chiefs' projected improvements are enough to overcome superior opponents. For example, can this roster match the firepower of the Los Angeles Rams, with their formidable defensive line and star-studded offense? The reality is that the Chiefs are going up against a different caliber of opponent now. A few years ago, I would have had immense confidence in their ability to dominate, but the league has fundamentally improved. The overall quality of play is higher, and the margins are slimmer. This crucial contextual variable, a team's performance relative to the league as a whole, is almost never discussed, yet it is critically important. Those are my primary thoughts on the matter. I am genuinely interested in hearing your perspectives. What is your assessment of the Chiefs' current roster? Are you comfortable with their wide receiving core and the offense as a whole, or do you share my lingering concerns about their ability to compete with the best of the best? Please share your opinions in the comments below. I make it a point to read every single comment, whether you agree with me or vehemently disagree. Let's engage in some robust discussions and maybe even a few friendly debates. Most importantly, let's keep the conversation fun and engaging. And if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are actively building a fantastic community here, and I would be thrilled to have you as a part of it. My goal is to create something that we all feel connected to and excited to participate in. We are making great progress, and I appreciate your support. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it significantly helps with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you for your time, and I will see you in the next one.